Shut up and sit down.
And welcome back to another episode of Three Bros Sports. I know you're kind of thrown off guard right now because Connor always does this intro, and here I am sitting in his chair, sitting in his seat, and I can really just feel the energy radiating from this area. And I'm trying to do my best to conjure that spirit, but here we are with another episode of Three Bros Sports. We'll go with my real name today since I'm hosting. I'm Brett.
And I'm Calvin.
And somewhere out there in California, as Connor is out there visiting his old friends and such, somewhere out there he's saying, I'm Connor, as he's listening to this. So we appreciate you. And we'll actually have him calling in later on in the episode to give his takes on the upcoming games this weekend. But this past weekend was a pretty interesting week in football as we had two big upsets. The Minnesota Vikings upset the New Orleans Saints, so that made me happy, obviously, and the Tennessee Titans, maybe the bigger upset of the two in terms of, how much this game meant to beat this team was the Tennessee Titans upsetting the New England Patriots. So what was your take on that game before we get into the Saints and Vikings?
I was more shocked than anything else because I was working when this game first started, and then I come home, and all of a sudden Titans and Patriots are close. I'm like, wow, Titans are actually keeping it close. They're fighting for it. And then by the end of it, I'm like, how on earth did this happen? Because, New England, this was a little bit of an off year. I say that, and they went 12-4, so.
Yeah.
But
off in terms of the New England Patriots.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Tennessee this year has been a team that has somehow squeaked out wins, but through a lot of turmoil, especially with benching Mariota and all that. So it's surprising. I think Derrick Henry was honestly the biggest factor out of all that. He might honestly be the best player on that team right now. But
yeah, and this means so much for the Tennessee Titans. A team that just hasn't done anything since. Remember that one year they had Kerry Collins as their quarterback, and they went 15-1. Remember they were undefeated.
Yeah.
They lost to the Ravens, I believe, that 1 week. They went 15-1, and they were like, man, this Titans team might actually do it. I'm pretty sure they were one and done in the playoffs. But just to have that playoff win against a team like New England that is such a storied franchise with how much success they've had in the postseason really just says a lot for this Titans team and also a lot for the New England Patriots. Do you think that this is the end of the dynasty? Do you think they continue to decline from here, or do you think that this is just a fluke of a season and they come back next year and upset a lot of people, just like they did a few years back?
I'm going to say that this is the end of the dynasty. I think they'll still be good for a bit, but it's going to be like this was the first year where we really saw a decline out of that team. And I think it's just going to probably start spiraling until they get some younger guys in there. Tom Brady says he's coming back. Who knows if he's actually coming back to the Patriots since he's a free agent. But
that seems to be the hottest thing to talk about in terms of, where's Tom Brady going to play next year? And I honestly think I would be surprised if he plays somewhere else. I think it's more likely for him to stay. You don't really see big-name players like that making the big splash over other places. You had Brett Favre, but even then, the point where Brett Favre was at in his career and compare that to where Tom Brady is right now, it's really doesn't even compare. So
yeah.
It'll definitely be interesting to see, but I'm honestly getting tired of listening to all the sports analysts talk about that. So we'll move on. Where Tom Brady and Belichick will be in the next few years, who's to say? But we could go on about that forever. But we'll go on to a game that kind of had me, jumping off my couch and said a few questionable words at the TV. I thought I was over that beef with the New Orleans Saints a few years back when they were paying players to take players out of the game and beat the hell out of Brett Favre in that NFC Championship game. I thought I was over that beef, but when Kyle Rudolph caught that touchdown, I jumped up and I said a few words to that Saints team that I thought I let go a long time ago. But what did you see in this game? I could go on about how well they played, but I want to hear your unbiased opinion.
What I saw in this game was the Saints kind of, honestly, it surprised me the way that the Saints did this because all off season they were talked about as like kind of the team that could really make that jump to be a contender. And during the regular season, we saw this team go through a lot with Drew Brees getting hurt and everything like that, and they were still in it, still winning. And even Michael Thomas breaking the single season receptions record. This team looked loaded for a Super Bowl at least appearance, and then all of a sudden Kirk Cousins and the 6 seed Vikings come in to New Orleans and beat you. Yeah. It's one of those things to me where it's like, I guess New Orleans just got a flat tire or something.
I mean, if you don't have a healthy Dalvin Cook in this game, you don't win that game. I mean,
no.
At points there were throws where Kirk Cousins makes his Kirk Cousins throws, but I gotta give it to him. He really did come through on this game and play a really good game, especially in that fourth quarter with that long ball down to Adam Thielen across the field. He just lobbed it right over the defender and dropped it right in his pocket. I was just like, I'm sorry for all the flack I've given you. It's easy for Vikings fans and everyone to jump on his back. Being a Vikings fan, just having such bad luck. And, I was just waiting for something to happen. There was that fumble that Dalvin Cook had where they picked it up and scored. And it turns out that his knee was down. But I was just like, that is the most Minnesota way. And then on that last play, everyone's talking about, was it a push-off? Was it not a push-off? I was waiting for them to throw the flag because I'm like, I just jumped off the couch. I celebrated and everything. I thought we won. And it would be the most Viking thing ever for this to be called back. And then Drew Brees somehow finds a way to win the game. And then we go to the offseason disappointed again because I'm used to that. But what was your opinion on that push-off? Because obviously I'm going to say I don't believe it was. I think that there's things that should be called and things that should be just left to be played. I mean, that is just how I'm going to go off of it. What do you have to say about that?
I'm going to tell you right now that was absolutely a push-off. And that absolutely should have been offensive pass interference. But, I mean, I guess human error is a part of the game.
And, I mean, they justified it by saying that's a play that happens throughout the game. Yeah. Every week, every game it happens, and they haven't called it. They've let the play, stand. So when a play like this happens on the last play of the game, and I'm sure if I was a Saints fan and it was the other way around, or if they had caught the touchdown on us and pushed off, I'd be saying the same exact thing. But that's, honestly, that's the beauty of sports. And it works out in my scenario this time, but a lot of the times it doesn't. And trust me, I've been on the receiving end of these calls plenty of times.
Yeah.
But the refs are a part of the game, and human error is what it is. And all I can say is that we'll be playing next week, and we can move on from that. But, yeah, it definitely could have been called, but at the same time, I do think it was a good play. And I think that the Vikings just played better. I think that they deserve to win that game.
I feel like in this game, Minnesota, pretty much ever since Kirk Cousins got there, even a little bit before, the team was hyped up to be this really good team, up and coming, could even finally win a championship. And this was really the first time where we saw the Vikings actually living up to that potential.
Yeah, I mean, the defense came to play. I mean, Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter slid inside and lined above the guards and just gave them a handful all day. And Drew Brees, I mean, when that ball popped out of his hand, I felt like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm like, they actually made a play.
Yeah.
Usually it's, a play will get, a long pass will get lobbed over the head of Trey Waynes. He'll get burned, and it's just a touchdown, and the rest is history, or a missed field goal or something. But like I said, we could go on about this all day. We'll see what happens with Minnesota and San Francisco next week. I'm sure Connor will have some interesting things to say about that, but I'm going to have to defend my team. I'm going all the way now. It's Super Bowl or bust.
Tell you what, if they can beat San Francisco, I think they have a legitimate shot.
I believe that this game against San Francisco would be a lot more difficult to win than playing Seattle or Green Bay next week. I mean, if you come off a win against the Saints and the Niners and then play a team like that,
yeah,
it's a good shot to get to the Super Bowl. But I don't want to say that word. That word seems like I should knock on wood or something.
That word doesn't exist in Minnesota.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Except for when they host it.
What about the Buffalo and Houston? We'll go over to the other games that maybe weren't the biggest surprise. But Houston, comes out on top. And this was really a game that, Buffalo just probably lost it for themselves.
Yeah, I think Honestly, this was kind of a game where I felt like both teams kind of flatlined a little bit. I mean, I thought Houston would have at least, or really should have beaten Buffalo by, more than 3 points. I thought they would at least win, but that they were going to win handily. But Buffalo, they had it in the bag at one point, and they blew it. It's just one of those things where I feel like it's not so much that each team play well; it's that the Bills ended up playing a little bit worse than Houston did.
Yeah, I mean, Houston is probably one of the better teams at flatlining in big moments. I mean, playing against good teams, you should tell me one game where they've come out on prime time and looked like the team that we all talk about them being. I mean, they just haven't had that, edge yet. I mean, they haven't had the plays that put them over the top. So I'm not really surprised they beat Buffalo, but I do think they really have their hands full this week against Kansas City.
Oh, yeah.
But going over to Seattle and Philly, Seattle did come out on top, 17-9. What was your judgment on that hit on Carson Wentz from Jadeveon Clowney?
I mean, was it dirty? Yeah, a little bit, but
I mean, it's really easy to make those plays look dirty when you show them slow motion 12 times.
I think you can make an argument either way for it. I lean a little bit more towards the dirty side, but it's football. Sometimes it can't be helped.
I mean, he's sliding down, and Jadeveon Clowney just basically spears the back of his head for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a split-second call. I mean, when you slow it down to that, it looks like he has all the time in the world to, calculate what he's doing. But when he sees Carson Wentz running and he's sliding down, I mean, he's been tackling quarterbacks his whole life. So, he sees that, and it wasn't the smartest decision, obviously. I'm not justifying what he did. I'm just saying, let's look at, I don't think that he was intending to give Carson Wentz a concussion. I think it was just a stupid decision. And it ended up, Carson Wentz didn't even know what was going on the sidelines. I mean, it didn't look that bad, but it was a pretty bad head injury. So we'll see if that affects Carson Wentz in the future. He's obviously a quarterback who gets injured at every other game, it seems like. So we'll see. I think that I'm glad Seattle won this game because I was really not looking forward to hearing Eagles fans talk about how they were going back to the Super Bowl. Minnesota win.
As a Cardinals fan living in Maryland, I got to listen to Eagles fans, and then I get to listen to Seahawks fans. I'm screwed either way.
So getting into the picks for, the upcoming games this weekend for the NFL playoffs, the first game I wanted to go over, which is a pretty interesting one in my opinion, Seattle-Green Bay. You got a lot of people saying that Aaron Rodgers hasn't really proved himself in the playoffs, except for that 1 year when they did win the Super Bowl. And you got Russell Wilson coming in with a team that's really struggled this year, but you gotta give it to Russell Wilson for pulling that team together and getting them to where they are, beating Philadelphia, which a lot of teams said they might get upset by. Calvin, what's your pick with this Seattle-Green Bay game?
After careful deliberation about this, I'm deciding to go with the Seattle Seahawks just because so far this year, Seahawks have actually been even better on the road than they have been at home. And honestly, it's just to me, Seattle seems like a better team right now. I mean, they almost beat San Francisco out for the division. So to me, Seattle is still that team that, they were a wild card team, but they could beat just about anybody. So I got to take Seattle. Connor, how about you?
This is a really tough game, guys. As Green Bay hasn't proved to me yet that they are fully legitimate. I understand the record, but they haven't fully beaten a team all 4 quarters, which makes me really feel as if Russell Wilson has a big chance of pulling this off. So I'm going to join Calvin on this as well. I'm going to go with the Seahawks just on the basis of I can't trust that Packers defense so far yet. It doesn't seem as if this team is 100% ready for it. I don't know. I could definitely be wrong, but I'm just going to be going with the Seahawks on this one. Go with the safe bet.
To the Packers' credit, I mean, this is a defense that we haven't really seen on this Packers team in a long time. I mean, if Zadarius Smith can, perform like he did in those last few games of the season and put some pressure on Russell Wilson, I mean, that's going to go a long way. But I do really think it comes down to Aaron Rodgers, if he can, put a solid game together, because he really hasn't shown this whole season that he's been what he was at one point when they did win the Super Bowl. So I also have the Seahawks coming in and upsetting the Packers, but, this is one of those games that I do think could go either way. But being a Vikings fan, I sure would love to see Green Bay lose at home and have their playoff hopes crushed.
Yeah, then you wouldn't have to go to Lambeau and play them if you win.
Basically, after going to New Orleans and upsetting the Saints, I don't really fear any matchup at this point, really, honestly, because no one had us to win that game.
Okay.
So, I'm going to take my Vikings to beat anybody right now.
So is that going to be your pick against the Niners?
I'm going to take the Vikings in that game, sir.
Wow, okay. We don't even have to run in to start up with the Niners-Vikings game. We're going straight into the picks.
Okay.
All right, Brad, bring it on. Bring it on.
Is that the next one you
Niners.
want to go into?
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
Okay, well, Connor, why don't you start us off then?
Easy. San Francisco 49ers. If you look at the numbers of Jimmy Garoppolo against actually good teams, it's a 144 passer rating. He's been playing dominant. I understand that the Vikings have the best defense against tight ends. That's cool. But there's a guy named Deebo Samuel that's been out there. He's running like a madman. You may want to watch him. Emmanuel Sanders is being crazy. We have a healthy defense once again. I'm saying we as 49er fan. I know it's not actually my team, but I'm just counting them as if they are. Now, you have a healthy defense once again. And I'm not saying this is a blowout type game. This is going to be down to the wire. But the 49ers have been able to prove that in these situations, they're going to be able to pull away. Now, that Saints game was really impressive, but you have to remember that the Saints have been a little iffy here and there. It's either going to be a blowout or they'll allow a team to surprise them. Remember the game against Atlanta, where Atlanta had 8 sacks against Drew Brees and fully dominated them. Now, the 49ers, you don't know what you're going to see, but I'm going Niners
go off of teams that have looked shaky at points. They allowed 40 points against the Saints. They lost to the Falcons. Jimmy Garoppolo, a lot of the times when I'm watching him have to come back against these better teams in the fourth quarter and drive down the field, yeah, they get it done with a long field goal, but there's a lot of missed throws that Jimmy Garoppolo will have where it's just over their heads. He looks panicked out there. And I see
Don't worry, Brett.
I see the Vikings defense coming off of this game where no one in the league thought that they were going to win. They weren't even put in the playoff tape. They come in and beat Drew Brees and the Saints in the Superdome. You mentioned Deebo Samuel. Well, I'll mention Michael Thomas, who was pretty much non-existent in that game. Yeah, the one thing that does change is the quarterback scenario. Drew Brees, 40 years old, really showed his age out there. So Jimmy Garoppolo, I do think he's going to prove himself. And this isn't one of those games that if we lose, I'm going to be super upset because I'm super happy that we even beat the Saints in the first place. And I hate the Saints. I have nothing against the 49ers, so they've played well all season, but they have had shaky games. So a Minnesota team coming off a win like this is not a team I would want to see, as opposed to a team like Seattle.
Well, Brett, don't be worrying because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to be coming back from a deficit. I don't see that happening.
We'll see. Calvin, do you want to plug in your 2 cents here?
Yeah, as the one unbiased person here, I'm going to take the 49ers to win this game just because...
If Calvin picks it, then it's all right. We already know what the deal is, except for the Patriots.
Yeah, except for the Patriots and the Saints really getting me last week. But, San Francisco just seems like the better team in this instance. Plus, I have a really hard time trusting Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I feel like I heard all of this last week.
Well, it's just like Kirk Cousins is one of the most inconsistent quarterbacks there is. When he goes against a team with a good defense like San Francisco does, he tends to crap his pants. And,
I know. I won't forget about his track history, trust me.
I think if he can play well in this game, just not turn the ball over, Minnesota can get a win here, but I don't see him doing that, so I'm taking the Niners.
That's okay. It's okay. Just add fuel to the fire. But we'll move away from the biased opinions here because, it is playoffs. We try to stay unbiased, but there's a little bit added extra flame to that when you have a playoff in it. So, I can't just root against my team, Connor, and you're the same way. But let's look at the other side. Matchup that, I think we can all just choose one team in this one. It would be Baltimore versus Tennessee. And do any of you guys see Tennessee having a chance for this game, or do you see Baltimore just running away with this one?
Oh, I definitely see Tennessee having a chance for this game. The way that they've been playing as a whole, the meteorologist back in Tennessee saying Hurricane Henry, Typhoon Tannehill, It's legitimate. I understand Tannehill barely did anything against the Patriots, but it was a rainy conditions. It wasn't a great game for any quarterback. Now, let's just see how Derrick Henry does, because he's been scorching. And I do like the Ravens, but I can't count out the Titans for at least beating the Patriots. I mean, they have to have the most confidence out of anybody in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, I think Baltimore's still going to get a pretty good victory here, but I think Tennessee will at least be able to keep it close for a little bit in the first half. I'm thinking they'll put up at least 14 points, but Baltimore's going to end up putting up like 35.
I agree. No, I agree with that. I see it more as Tennessee could have the lead at the end of the first, but that's going to be the best that they'll get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to consider, though, that they did play earlier in the season, and the Ravens held Derrick Henry to 55 rushing yards. Now, this was earlier in the season when they still had Mariota and they were still trying to figure things out. So, yeah, the offense has definitely gone places since then, and I do think, like you guys said, if the Titans are going to win, and like everyone knows, they need Derrick Henry to have a big game. But another good note would be that the Ravens haven't allowed more than 100 rushing yards since their bye in Week 10. Now, they haven't played any running backs like Derrick Henry, which is another thing. So I definitely think he's going to be the X factor in this game, but I'm still going to take Baltimore to win this one. I think they're just worlds apart a better team.
Now, I just at least want to throw out to you guys, you have no idea how happy I am of how I was correct on picking Tennessee and predicting Derrick Henry to go completely bonkers. You have no idea how happy I was to watch that go into fruition. So that's why I still believe in Tennessee could have a chance, but I'm not going to pick them.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it happened.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. And, I mean, the Titans are one of those teams that if they do upset them, they're a fun team to watch. So I would definitely like to see them go further in the playoffs, but I just don't think it's going to happen against this Baltimore team. Maybe if they were playing Kansas City, I could see them upsetting Kansas City, but
yeah,
I just think Baltimore's too good this year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
I'm with you.
But we'll go on to our fourth and final game for the playoffs, Houston versus Kansas City. Now, this is another game that's kind of hard to predict. Houston's coming off a big win against Buffalo, and Kansas City's coming off the bye, so they're rested up, and their defense was playing really well at the end of the season there. So, guys, who do you have in this game?
Oh, this is easy. I'm sorry. It's Kansas City by a long shot. I mean, the Texans shouldn't have even been into that game. That was just Buffalo not having playoff experience. Josh Allen starting to poop the bed. I mean, that game should have all been Buffalo, and to be able to give that up was really tough. I mean, let's go back to that 3rd and 18 play, or 3rd and 17. How are you not going to get a stop on that? Buffalo just completely lost themselves, and Kansas City's been hot. I mean, once they clinched that bye, I think the confidence moved their side. And I know it's an Andy Reid-led team, and we know the playoff reputation, but this is a different story. It's a different team. You can tell Mahomes is back with revenge. In that AFC Championship game last year, that second half, he had the Patriots figured out, but he didn't have enough time. So he's ready to beat whoever's in his way. And right now, Kansas City has to feel as if there's nobody in their way. I know Baltimore's been great, but since there's no New England, they're going to feel so much more better going into this playoffs. So it's easy. I got to go with Kansas City.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that one. Calvin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I like Houston, but honestly, I just feel like this is a game that's too much on Kansas City's side to win. I mean, it's in Kansas City, and Houston didn't exactly look the best against Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo was probably one of the most underrated teams all year long, but Houston should have easily beaten them by 2 scores, in my opinion. But with this going into it, and on top of that, Kansas City does have more playoff experience than Houston does. I mean, Deshaun Watson's got, I think 1 playoff game, something like that. Didn't they win the division last year?
I want to say I don't even remember, honestly. That division has just been kind of subpar the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I know it wasn't the Colts, and I know it wasn't the Jaguars. It wasn't the Titans.
I thought it was the Colts last year.
Was it?
I thought it was the
Did
Colts.
Jacoby Brissett get him that far? We
Andrew Luck was there last year.
I can't fact check myself here because I'm recording.
Andrew Luck was there last year. He played the whole season.
Oh, okay.
You're right, he did. I don't know why I didn't think he was there, but yeah, okay. Let's just say I want to say that it was the Colts. That sounds right to me.
Yeah, for some reason it does too.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day here, though, I'm taking the Chiefs to win this one.
Yeah,
Good.
I also got to take the Chiefs on this one. Like I said, I think Houston has kind of underperformed in terms of what people thought Deshaun Watson was going to do in his, I believe, third year it is now.
Yeah.
So, they're a team that can play really good when they have everything going for them. In terms of the rushing game, getting pass protection for Deshaun Watson has always been an issue. But I think that Kansas City is just coming off a hot streak, and they're looking to make amends for last year when they kind of lost the playoff game. Patrick Mahomes didn't get a chance to go down there and win in overtime, so I think that kind of left a sour taste in their mouth. They're ready to play that first playoff game since then, and I don't think that Houston is a good enough team to really go into Arrowhead Stadium and beat them. So I'm going to go with Kansas City on that one as well.
All right.
And
I dig it.
And well, Connor, I know it's early over there in California. You're ready to go back to sleep and get a few more hours if you can. So we'll let you go. We appreciate you waking up early and calling in, though.
All right, thanks so much, guys. I'm excited to watch this game, and for all the viewers, don't forget Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. TVDelmarva.com, Three Bros Sports. We'll be on. As I'm not going to be on, actually. It's going to be Calvin and Brett doing it. They're going to be doing a bang-up job. You guys got to watch it. I promise you. You won't regret it.
Well, thanks for hyping us up.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Connor.
I'm hyping you up, Brett. You got this.
We appreciate it.
You got this, buddy.
Appreciate
you
it.
too, Calvin. All right, guys, have
Thanks,
a good
man.
one.
You too,
You
man.
too, man.
In terms of all the other teams, I mean, there's what is there? 8 teams left. Okay. There's 8 teams left. There's 24 other teams making moves, some of them for head coaches. And we had some news come in this past week. We obviously record every Thursday, so we give you the news as, it comes up throughout the week, and we all put it all together and come with it to you on Thursday. So Joe Judge, the former special teams coach and wide receivers coach, he had 2 roles on the New England Patriots staff. He's going to be the new head coach of the New York Giants. Now, in my opinion, this just seems like the New York Giants trying to get whatever part of the New England system they can. Obviously, Josh McDaniels probably didn't want that job because the Giants team is pretty rough. And obviously, they're quick to fire their coaches if they don't see success. I mean, Pat Shurmur, 1 year, he's out. So I think that they got what they can, but I think it was mainly just because of his experience in the Bill Belichick system. But, I mean, you're a special teams coach and a wide receivers coach. You really don't have that much control over the team. So what is your take on this?
I mean, I do agree with, I think that it is them trying to get something from New England, but, I mean, I'm not saying it won't work. It's, John Harbaugh was a special teams coach, and then he got the job in Baltimore, and look where they're at now. But I think the Giants at this point, they're just they're just throwing in the dark and hoping they hit something. Maybe a Patriots coach will work, but, I mean, New England head coaches, or like coaches that turn head coach, really don't exactly have the best track record.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weiss, guys like that.
Matt Patricia has had a hard time with the Detroit Lions, but, I mean, I think anybody would with a team like that. I mean, Brian Flores with the team that he's had in Miami, you got to give him credit to what he did towards the end of the season. I mean,
he did.
And he beat New England at the end of the season. I mean, that's all she wrote. You knew it was going to be a rough playoffs for New England when they lose to Miami week 17.
That's a silver lining in Miami.
And you got them trying to, do some kind of trickery on the last play, got throwing laterals to Tom Brady. I mean, come on. That's just kind of sums up the Patriots season right there.
Yeah.
But moving on, I mean, there's really not much to talk about with this job. We're going to have to wait and see how it works out because this guy has no experience as a head coach, not even an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. He was special teams coach and wide receiver. So we'll see what happens. Maybe he can build a staff with experience around him. But
I sure hope so for his sake.
A coach with more experience that got hired this past week, Mike McCarthy, is going to be the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I believe he signed a 5-year contract. I don't remember what the exact number was, But he also had his introduction with Jerry Jones and friends this past weekend. And he mentioned he's going to bring a Super Bowl back to these Dallas Cowboys. So, Calvin, my question for you would be, do you think he can do that?
I think he's better than Jason Garrett.
Is he the guy?
And maybe. I'm not going to say no because he has won a Super Bowl before with a team that wasn't as talented as, a lot of the others at the time. On top of that, the NFC East is horrible right now. I mean, Dallas and Philly are about the only teams in there that actually seem somewhat relevant.
Yeah, so, we saw it this year. If you can win the division, you'll at least get a home game in the first round.
Yeah, there's that. And then plus, the NFC is starting to slip a little bit. San Francisco has been upcoming. Green Bay has been really good this year, but that's not usually the norm anymore for them. They've been pretty inconsistent. And then even with the NFC South, New Orleans is great, but let's be honest, this might be Drew Brees' last year, so who knows what's going to happen there. And then the rest of the whole NFC South is just more inconsistent than the McDonald's drive-through getting my order right. So,
well, another hire in the NFC East that I could actually see, turn out better over the long term for the team would be Ron Rivera to the Redskins. Now, you've seen him. He went to the Super Bowl with the Carolina Panthers, and now, obviously, he didn't win it. We saw the effort from Cam Newton in that game wasn't really the best. You mentioned that fumble on that one play kind of sums it up, but I think that he can go in there and change the culture of a team. He has success. He's a guy that the players like playing for. And you saw one thing that the Redskins haven't had in a long time is a solid defense.
Yeah.
And he was able to shape Luke Kuechly and resurge Thomas Davis's career and really have one of the better defenses over the last 3 years. This year is kind of the first year they faltered off. And I think that with him going in there and then bringing in Jack Del Rio, who was also the Oakland head coach a few years back when they went to the playoffs, I think that they're just building another strong staff for them to turn around this Redskins team. I honestly don't think that Mike McCarthy is the guy for Dallas. On his way out, his offense was pretty much, everyone was saying how tired it was. He wasn't adapting to today's game. Yeah, he's saying that he spent the last year, revamping his offense, and he has something called the McCarthy file that we're probably going to hear about until he gets fired from Dallas for not going to the playoffs or something like that. Because we've seen the Dallas Cowboys continue to underperform. And do you think Mike McCarthy is going to come in there and fire these guys up? Have you ever seen Mike McCarthy fired up?
No, never.
No, he just stands there with his playbook in front of his face. You only know what his eyes and his forehead look like the whole game.
I think he could do better than Jason Garrett.
But yeah, but what has Jason Garrett done? That's not saying much.
8-8.
I think they should have hired a guy that, I understand where they're going with he has the second most playoff wins to Bill Belichick. Or I'm not sure if that was playoff wins or playoff appearances, but he obviously has success. He has a Super Bowl ring, but I think that they needed someone who was going to come in there and change the culture, honestly. Because Dallas Cowboys, Jason Garrett let them pretty much do what they want because he wanted them to be happy. I don't see Mike McCarthy really doing anything different. Honestly, I listened to Greg Jennings talk about when he was the coach of the Green Bay Packers and he played for him. He's going to let you kind of do what you want and be the man you want to be, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to do what he wants. Yeah. And I don't think that this team necessarily is mature enough to take that next step themselves. They've showed that plenty of times.
I think that might be an understatement, honestly.
Yeah, just look at Ezekiel Elliott holding out and then coming back and playing awful this whole year.
Yeah.
It's clear they've all been laundering for money, but they haven't backed it up with their play at all.
Yeah, I think it can work. It's just going to take, I'm going to give them that 3-year window where it's if by the end of year 3, if you're still not having a winning record, yeah, kick the curb. But
yeah,
I wouldn't say one bad year in Dallas would really
I just don't think
it.
He's the guy. Unless something happens. My predictions haven't been the best. I just don't see it with Mike McCarthy. But moving on, another kind of signing that I don't really know what to make of yet. Baylor's ex-coach now, Matt Rule, signed a contract with the Carolina Panthers. Now, I believe the job he wanted was for the New York Giants. When he got the offer from the Panthers, he called up to New York and said, if you match this, I'll come up there and coach for you. I guess the Giants weren't completely sold on him, so they went with the special teams coach from New England. But I don't really know what to make of this, Calvin. Do you have any opinion on this Matt Rule hire? Do you think his college game is going to be able to transfer over? Because, Baylor, yeah, they've been a good football program, but they haven't really been an Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State. They haven't really done much. They've been up there in the standings. Don't get me wrong, that's impressive, but...
Yeah, I don't really see this hire going very far. I feel like this is just going to be... Matt Rule's probably just going to be a coach that is there for a bit, probably 2 or 3 years, and then ends up getting kicked to the curb because the team's not as good, but... It's hard when you go straight from college coach to the top of the NFL just because, I don't know if he even has any NFL experience in dealing with real adults that are doing this for a living, not just to get to this point or for school. I don't know how it'll work. I'm not exactly holding my breath on it, but I'm going to say it's more likely not going to work out, but there's a possibility that they could actually still be good.
That was the safest prediction I've ever heard.
It's
there's
just
a possibility he might fail, but there's also the possibility he won't. So.
I don't think it's going to work out. I'm just not that impressed with. I feel like Carolina could have done a lot better than him. Maybe. Honestly, I think Mike McCarthy would have been a better option, but to me, it's just Matt Rule hasn't proven anything to me.
Yeah.
Maybe if he was a Clemson or an Alabama, sure, but Baylor's good. They're not great.
Yeah, well, honestly, like I said, I don't know much about Matt Rule, so we'll see how it pans out. Another team that's still looking for a coach would be the Cleveland Browns. They're setting up interviews with Eagles defensive coordinator. What's his first name? Schwartz.
Jim Schwartz.
Jim Schwartz. That's what it was. He used to coach the Detroit Lions, went 29-52 with them, so that's not a great track record, but I think that's where head coaches go to die, is the Detroit Lions.
I think that's where everyone goes to die, is Detroit Lions.
It used to be the Cleveland Browns, but it's slowly starting to turn to the Detroit Lions. Is there any coach, be it Jim Schwartz or someone else you have in mind, that could go into Cleveland and maybe help Baker Mayfield?
If there is, it's not Jim Schwartz, I can tell you that. Under Detroit, they still had Matt Stafford and everything, and that team looked bad.
Mm-hmm.
They looked bad. So I'm honestly kind of surprised he's even getting the interview just because of how bad it was in Detroit, even with the roster he had. He still had Matt Stafford. He still had Megatron. So,
and look at the Eagles' defense this year.
Yeah.
It was...
It's just, to me, I don't feel like his resume leads enough for an interview. So I don't think he's going to get hired. I really don't think he should. If he does, it ain't going to be long there. McDaniels, maybe he might be able to work with Baker Mayfield, but I wonder how far he could actually take the team as a whole.
Right.
Just because, we saw what he did before, and it wasn't exactly the greatest in the world. So, but he at least can run an offense.
Yeah, it's it will definitely take a certain individual to do it, because we haven't seen anyone do it yet in the last, 15 years? I don't even know.
15.
At this point.
It's like been
just
50.
Seems like it just seems like the whole time. But we'll see what happens with that. So if we were going into our next topic, me and Calvin were kind of talking about going over with the new year upon us, 2020, and the next 10 years ahead. There's a number of teams that haven't won a Super Bowl or even made an appearance in the Super Bowl. Detroit Lions. But
Cleveland Browns.
What were Calvin had an interesting question. What were some teams that you see winning in the next decade their first Super Bowl?
There's a lot of teams I think that could, because a lot can happen in 10 years, but As of right now, I like
Give me 3,
3.
because I picked 3, so give me 3.
Okay. I like Minnesota. I like what they're doing right now, and I think they can get even better. So I'd say they have a legitimate shot. I'm also going to say the Texans, because they have a lot of talent. It's just they need to put it together on prime time and be a consistent team. If they can do that, I don't see why not, because, I mean, shoot, I've been thinking the Texans have a legitimate chance for the last few years.
Yeah.
And other than that, I mean, Bengals, no. Browns, no. Lions, no.
You'd be lucky to make an appearance.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville, Tennessee, I really don't. It's rough. I would love to say Arizona. Well,
a couple of years ago.
you know what? I am going to take my Cardinals for that, just because, not just because I'm a fan, but because Kyler Murray did look pretty good his rookie year. And the rest of the team, I mean, there's definitely improvements to be made, the whole offensive line in particular, but there's still a lot of upside to the team, and especially I know a lot of people are going to want Larry Fitzgerald to get a ring, myself in particular, but...
How about Larry Fitzgerald in particular? I'm sure he's tired of
I would imagine
being on that mediocre team.
I think as soon as, if they win the Super Bowl, he's retiring on that podium. I guarantee
He's
it.
like, all right, I'm done. I quit.
So
It's over.
I'll take him just because I see a lot of potential, and where a lot of other teams that might even be looking better right now, like the Chargers, I don't see it looking that great in the future. Especially, I mean, Chargers, it's
been rough for them.
They got some wins, but
I mean, back in the day, I think it was maybe even the year that the Patriots went undefeated. The Chargers were like 14-2, and they were like
that was 2006.
There's like so it was a couple of years before the undefeated season, but they were at like 14-2, and they were the team. With LT, they were the team to beat the Patriots. They just couldn't do it, and it's been the history of the Chargers. Another interesting team you mentioned, the Jaguars. We thought in 2016 they might be on the way there with how well that defense is playing with Jalen Ramsey's rookie season and Blake Bortles playing somewhat okay, just enough to get them to a solid season. We thought the Jaguars might be going that way, but they've really imploded. Simply Jacksonville summed up, which is a team you don't really talk about that often. But like you said, Minnesota, I think, has a good chance. I think that their window is pretty much now.
Yeah.
It has been now for the last 3 years with this defense. I mean, they've played together for the last 4 or 5 years, and you don't really see that in today's NFL often. I mean, you see players like Anthony Barr turning down more money to stick with these guys because they believe they can do it. So the culture that Mike Zimmer has built, I mean, they want to keep him there. Rick Spielman brings in good players, so I think they're definitely a solid bet. I'm really hoping. I'd like to see one. I'm sure that there's Vikings fans much, much older than me who are, wanting to see a Super Bowl win before they croak. So it is what it is. I think they're a good pick. Another team I said would be Buffalo Bills. I think that their trajectory has been really on the upside lately.
Yeah.
They've been getting better every year, so I think they're a team that could really turn around that slump. I think the Vikings can definitely relate to that. We've been to like 3 or 4 Super Bowls and lost them all, so that's rough. Well, the Bills, it was like 4 years in a row, so that's rough on another level.
Each one worse than the last.
And then the Texans, like you said, with Deshaun Watson, I think he's just going to continue to get better. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to, potentially be in the Hall of Fame one day just because he is such an incredible player. With his escapability and ability to make plays when you think nothing can happen. I mean, he's got that Russell Wilson, that Drew Brees, that type of, you never know what's going to happen when he can throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
So I think that keeping him there and continuing to build around him and maybe getting more experience in the playoffs, because every time they get there, they just seem overwhelmed with the whole situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if Bill O'Brien is going to be the guy to get him there, but we'll see. I think that the Texans are also a good pick with that.
Now, here's one other thing. Do the Lions make the playoffs?
I think that they do. I think 10 years without making the playoffs is kind of a rough thing to predict for a team. They've shown at times, I mean, they made the playoffs a few years back. I think it might have been 2016, 2015. I think it was 2015. I think it was Teddy Bridgewater's rookie year. That's why I remember. Because I went to a game and they were like talking about being in the postseason. But anyways, I think that it would be tough for them. I don't know if it's going to be in Matt Stafford's career. I don't know if he's going to be able to see it.
I don't think he'll be in Detroit.
He's been such a solid quarterback. Put him on a team that's somewhat capable. I mean, imagine what he could do. But you know, I
gotta say no.
If I had to put money on it, I would say that they would.
I'm gonna say no.
I think there's a chance in the next 10 years that they somehow make the 6th seed.
There's a chance, but I'm like, Green Bay still got a few years that they can be really good. Yeah. Minnesota as well, and they are typically run a little bit better.
You never know what Chicago's gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like Detroit has been so poorly run that I'm like,
it's definitely not a division that's gonna be easy to win.
Yeah,
any year.
If they do, they're a wild card team at best.
I mean, they're up there. I think that the toughest division is probably the NFC West that you guys got. I think all around, just having the Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks in one division is just not fair for the Cardinals.
No, but one day.
Also the AFC West is pretty stacked too with the Chiefs and when the Raiders can play decent football and the Chargers can.
They're surprisingly doing okay under Gruden.
And Broncos are you never know what they're gonna do. But that'll wrap up today's episode. It's just me and Calvin here in the Three Bros Sports Lab here, just cooking up some hot news takes for you. So Connor will be back next Thursday, if I do believe that's correct. I mean, school starts next week, so he should be back. And it'll just be me and Calvin there in the studio on Saturday on TV Delmarva for the Three Bros Sports Show. So check that out, and it's been an interesting episode without Connor here, but that'll wrap up our show. I'm Brett.
I'm Calvin.
And somewhere out there, Connor's saying his salutes to the audience as well. And we'll see you on Saturday, or we'll see you here listening to us back on Thursday. Have a good one, folks.
Three Bros Sports would like to thank Anchor FM for sponsoring this podcast and Benjamin Tissock on bensound.com for the amazing intro, outro music.